I'm Zoë Clark. I'm Senior Self-Management Programme Officer here at NASS, and tonight's session is all about exercising for axial SpA, how to create a routine, and also how to set some goals for yourself as well. So firstly, we all know that exercise is important for your axial SpA, as well as for your general health, your fitness, mood, and self-esteem as well. I think it's important to note as well that being active can be really good in giving you those feelings of control over your condition and over your body, which is really important when you live with a long-term condition such as axial SpA. Now, there are different types of exercise that can be helpful for your axial SpA and for very different reasons. So when we're talking about exercising, I know it can be really easy to get overwhelmed, particularly if your pain and your fatigue of your condition actually stop you doing everyday activities. It can feel really overwhelming then when we start talking about exercise. But it can be really helpful when you think of exercise not as necessarily a class or particular activities, but just thinking of it in activity in general. So I'll go through the benefits of exercise in the next few slides. I'm going to also be linking it to everyday activities that you do, and you'll probably realise that actually you do a lot of these activities and these types of exercise in your day-to-day life. So it's not necessarily talking about changing the exercises you're doing, but just changing the way you think about them. So firstly, I'm going to start with maintaining and improving your mobility, because I think for a lot of people, including myself with AS, I think this becomes one of your priorities. When you experience a lot of stiffness in your joints, you really want to know how you can keep mobile, keep moving. So it really is a combination of maintaining your joint flexibility and your muscle strength, and these both work together to help keep you more mobile. In terms of flexibility, that can include particular classes like yoga and somatics. It can also include particular stretches, and I've linked here to our Stretches for Daily Life video, because we've got some really good exercises that take just a couple of minutes. They target different areas of the body, and it means you can incorporate them into your daily life quite easily. So do take a look at those after the live session. And as I said, everyday activities can all really help with your flexibility. So it can be things that you naturally do, such as hanging your washing on a line, reaching down into a cupboard or up onto a shelf. All those things are actually going to be working on your flexibility without you really thinking about it. And then in terms of strength, so it can be particular exercises like swimming, using something like a resistance band to get those resistance exercises. You may have had these with a physiotherapist before, and classes such as Pilates. But also any everyday activities where you're really using your muscles and getting that resistance is going to have this good effect. So that could be things like doing the housework, particularly doing hoovering or lifting anything. That's all going to work on strengthening as well. So you may well look at your day-to-day life and think, actually, yeah, I'm kind of ticking some of these boxes already just with the things that I naturally do. Now, in terms of looking after your lung and heart health, obviously this is really important whether you have axial SpA or not. But it's really important to not only look at these types of exercises where you're getting your heart rate up, but also those everyday activities. So when we talk about heart and lung health, really we're talking about trying to get some cardiovascular exercise. So that's any kind of exercise where it gets your heart rate up, you get a little bit out of breath, so it's difficult to maintain a conversation while you're active, and you may be sweating a little bit as well. So really any everyday activities you could form into a cardiovascular type exercise, such as playing with your children, playing with your dog, particularly outside, going for a walk, but also some housework if you do things briskly, and things like brisk walking, that can all get your heart rate up and get you feeling like you're working out a little bit without necessarily having to join a particular class or set aside 20 minutes, half an hour of your day. You can just break it up through the day like that. And that can also be really helpful if you do experience a lot of fatigue. And in terms of looking after your bone health, so this is really important for people with axial SpA. And really it's any exercise or any activity where you're weight bearing and you're getting a little bit of resistance on your bone. This helps stimulate the bone growth, which we naturally have going on continually in the body. So again, it could be particular exercises where you're weight bearing, things like walking, jogging, Pilates, particularly if you're doing standing exercises. You can do a thing called rebounding on a trampoline, which is nice because it's you get that resistance, which is good for your bone health, but it's not high impact. And I've also linked to a previous session that Andrew, an osteopath, did, where he went through weight-bearing exercises for people with axial SpA to help improve and maintain your bone health. So do have a look at that link later on if you'd like some more specific exercises for that. But again, looking at everyday activities, if you're walking around the supermarket or just around the house, that's still going to be weight bearing. You're still going to be looking after your bone health with that. If you're able just to jog up and down the stairs a couple of times, if you're able to, again, that's going to be stimulating the bone growth and be really beneficial. So do think about those activities, everyday activities, not just particular exercises. And it is common for people with axial SpA to experience postural changes, even just from tight muscles. So I've linked to our previous session with the physiotherapist Emily, who ran a posture check, where she went through a really quick routine that you can do to help just assess your posture. You can do it at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, just to make you a little bit more mindful of it. And she also went through a few tips on improving your posture as well. So do have a look at that if you'd like a bit more detailed information on that. But a really good time to include something like this is actually when you've got those free moments of the day that you don't necessarily think about. So it could be waiting for the kettle to boil, waiting for bread in the toaster, after you brush your teeth in the morning, or just before you leave the house. And actually linking something like this to your particular activity is a really good way of cementing it in your routine. If it's something you do just before you leave the house every morning, you just do a quick posture check. It just helps remind you of your posture, and going through the day, then you're going to be a little bit more mindful of it. It may not be something that you'll do every day, but just reminding yourself every now and then, and even having something available like a post-it note on the door, just so that you've got that physical reminder for you to do that before you leave the house. And of course, building balance is really important for making sure that you're reducing your risk of falls and therefore fall-related injuries. Particularly as we age, it's really important to do balance exercises as part of our day-to-day activities. So I'll pop a link here. We've got Heather's balance exercises. So physiotherapist Heather went through some really great exercises that can just take a couple of minutes. And again, linking to those times when we may have a few minutes free that we don't really think about. So again, those kind of daily activities, but also during a phone call, there may be some of the exercises that you can just incorporate into those activities, so you're sort of multitasking at the same time. But also other exercises that you might enjoy doing, you might actually, without really realizing it, be working on your balance at the same time. So things like Tai Chi, yoga and Pilates, not only are they great strengthening exercises, they're really relaxing, but also they'll be working on your balance as you're doing them without you even realizing it, which is a real bonus. And then the final benefit we're looking at is managing your pain. So we know that being active really is helpful for managing your axial SpA pain. And particularly if you find that your pain is related to muscle tightness or joint stiffness, then being active and being mobile is really helpful to help reduce that pain. And we know that it can be really difficult to be active during a flare. So I've put the link to our previous live session all about being active during a flare, because it can be really difficult to do your usual day-to-day activities, let alone exercises. So I went through in much more depth how you can be active to help reduce the intensity of the flare and also help you keep mobile and keep moving during that flare up while you're waiting for it to pass. So now that we've looked at everyday activities, you may have realized that you're actually already covering some of these areas in your day-to-day life. But you may have spotted some areas where you're not covering those exercises. For example, particularly with the cardiovascular exercise, some people find, particularly if they're as a desk job, they may not be really covering that in their day-to-day life. So actually it can be really helpful just every now and again, every 3 to 6 months, coming back to something like this and just looking at your overall day or your overall week and just seeing if you're covering all of those activities across the whole week. Then you can spot any gaps if there are any, and actually scheduling in those activities and building them into your routine can be really helpful then going forward. So I'm going to go through a few specific examples depending on how people spend their day. So hopefully that one of these will resonate with you and give you a few tips. But again, it's just looking at your individual day, going back to those activities I've just described and seeing if you're covering each of those. So firstly, I'm going to start with people who work at a desk job, something I can now very much relate to. So the main difficulty people with a desk job find is that they're not moving as much. They may experience stiffness and pain, particularly in the spine and in the hips as well. They may also struggle to fit the cardiovascular exercise into their day. And I've actually identified 4 different areas where we can actually utilize some of that time to hopefully bring in some of the other exercises that you may need just to help you through the day. So those 4 areas are the commute time, lunchtime, any breaks you take, and also after work as well. So the commute really is a key time where you're likely to be able to get in some cardiovascular exercise. And depending on how you travel into work, if you use public transport, then it's an idea to get off one stop early, so then you can just do a brisk walk for the rest of the way. Just adding in that extra 5-10 minutes with that brisk walk, even if it's only in the morning before work, if you feel at the end of the day that you're quite fatigued, that can really build in and add up over the week. You know, if you go in 5 days a week and you do that 5-10 minutes brisk walking, that all really adds up and can be really beneficial for your health, but also for your axial SpA as well, if you're then going to be sedentary for the rest of the day. Lunchtime is a really great opportunity, and I can definitely recommend doing what I do, where you block off your lunchtime in your diary and you make sure that you stick to it. Otherwise, it's really easy to find that you've just sat at your desk, worked through your lunchtime, or eaten at your desk while you're doing other work. And then you find that when you go to get up later in the day, or even while you're sat there, that pain and stiffness in your back has really built up. So it's important that you really value being able to get away from the desk and get moving. It's not only good for your axial SpA, but actually it's good for your eyesight as well. It's really good to be able to take time away from the screen, and also for your mental health as well. Having that break is really good to help avoid any of the brain fog or mental fatigue that you can get through the day. Then any break times can be really useful for doing stretches. So again, just any of those everyday stretches that I linked to at the beginning of the session. There are a few that you can do just standing. So if you're going to make a cup of tea or grab some water, that's a great time just for fitting in a few of those stretches just to counter out the time that you've been sat still. And also it can be really helpful to use something like quite a small glass for your water, so that rather than having a really big glass or bottle, that means you don't have to get up very often to refill it. You can actually use a small glass, then you're getting up more frequently. So even if it's just a short walk to the kitchen, again, it's just building in that movement through the day to help reduce the effects of sitting down for too long. Then finally, after work, a lot of people describe to me that they feel very fatigued after work. So the last thing they want to do is loads of exercise, and I can completely understand that. But actually, there's a stretch that we have on our website called the 6 p.m. stretch, and that is a really nice full body stretch that you can do lying down in bed. So if you've been at a desk all day, or even if you've been quite active through the day, it's a lovely stretch to just be able to kind of lie down, decompress, stretch out, particularly at the front of the shoulders. They can get quite tense if you're sat working at a keyboard all day. So that's a lovely one that you can kind of build into your routine, even if it's a matter of, again, having a note on, in your hallway. So when you get home from work, it's that visual reminder to go and do that stretch rather than to jump straight into your usual evening. And even using sort of timers on your phone can be really helpful, just to give you that nudge to just take some time out for yourself and help counter out the effects of being at your desk through the day. Now, going completely to the opposite end of the spectrum, so for people who work in a very active or manual job, I speak to a lot of people in these types of jobs on the helpline, and they really describe that it's so difficult because they are so active. It can be really hard to really balance that with their pain and their fatigue of their condition. So hopefully these tips will be helpful. So one of the biggest things for fatigue really is pacing your activities, but I know that with a manual job that can be really difficult. Also looking at sort of a lot of people, when they describe it, they may be feeling quite good during work when they're active, but then find they get a lot of pain after work. So a lot of these effects then delayed. Similarly with stiff joints in the morning as well, they may find that they're feeling quite good while they're working and while they're moving, but they feel those after effects the next day. So really there's a few different tips I can give here. So as I said, in terms of fatigue, the usual advice is pacing your activity. And I know with an active or manual job, particularly if you're not self-employed, it can be really difficult to pace your activities. But we can actually look at it not necessarily in taking lots of breaks and lots of stretches and things like that, but looking at the way that you're using your body and trying to really use different body areas through the day. So if you think about the tasks that you've got to do that day, and just try and think if they're working on particular body areas or if it's going to affect a particular body area. For example, if you've got some tasks that mean you're stooping over and you're really stretching your low back, somewhere where you're working overhead and that's putting strain on your neck, trying to break these up so you do some time in one position. When you feel the effect of that, you then switch to another position. So although you're still being active, you're still pacing your energy and you're pacing in terms of the pain and stiffness you might experience as well. And then, of course, taking breaks as often as you can. Again, if you aren't self-employed, this can be really difficult, but it's important to remember that having breaks because of your long-term condition means it is a reasonable adjustment according to the Equality Act in the UK. You are entitled to doing these reasonable adjustments that make your working life easier when you have a condition such as axial SpA. So it's important to remember that. And in terms of pain after work, then of course the usual self-care techniques that we recommend, things like using heat or ice packs if you find those helpful, having a hot bath, even using TENS machines. These are really good for pain management. And I've linked to, I'll pop a link in this to Colin's previous video all about non-medication pain relief. That can be really helpful just in helping to relieve your pain and make things a lot more comfortable, not only after work, but also then reducing the impact the next day as well. And again, the 6 p.m. stretch is a lovely one. Even if you are very active, you may find that you're using particular areas of your body, and particularly if you're doing sort of heavy work, then you're using the muscles a lot. So doing time stretching them afterwards is really helpful to reduce any of that stiffness from building up. And then in terms of the joint stiffness, some gentle stretches in bed before getting out and weight bearing is really helpful. And also any kind of bed yoga or bed stretches. So we've done a previous session with Jamie from Yoga for AS, where he went through a whole routine of yoga you can do from the comfort of your bed. So you may find that in the morning, if you need to loosen your joints up before you're getting up and starting your day, that can be a really good way to start it. Now, if you're watching and you have a young family, particularly if you're a single parent, you are probably thinking, I don't even have time to go to the loo in peace. How on earth can I exercise through my day? And I have had a taster of this over the last year with my nephew, so I can definitely understand that it is a challenge when you have little ones around to really have any time for yourself, let alone when we're talking about exercising. Because of this, I've actually spoken to parents with axial SpA to help get some tips from them in terms of how they found it, what they found was helpful to help manage their condition while looking after their little ones. So hopefully these tips will be helpful. Again, the P word, pacing. Now, when you're talking about looking after children, it can be really hard to think about pacing your activities at all because you are completely on their schedule, not yours. But actually, you can look at the activities that you're doing with them and see if there are any activities you can do that will really tire them out while you're able to then rest and relax a little bit. So, for example, if you go to a playground where there's some good seating areas so that they can run around, use all their energy up, and you can sit and have a rest, that can be really good, particularly if it's a short walk from home. So you've got a little bit of activity getting there, you're loosening things up, but then you've got that time to rest and recover afterwards. Also looking at any restful activities, so things like colouring where you're sitting with them, or even snuggling on the sofa with a book and reading. That can be a really good way of keeping them entertained while you're actually resting as well. And one tip I absolutely loved was getting these big sheets of paper that you have on the floor, so they're able to colour and scribble around. You can just be sitting on the sofa and just resting, or doing your exercises if you need to, and they're well entertained. You're not worried about them going off on the edges onto furniture or anything. So some people find that online exercise classes are a lot easier to fit in, particularly if you've then got people around at home, because you don't have that travel time. It can be a lot easier to join classes online rather than going out to them. And easier said than done, I know, but not being afraid to ask for help. For example, if there is a once a week exercise class that you know is really going to help your condition, then it might be helpful to see if there's someone who can come and look after the children just to give you that time. And again, the tips I previously shared about getting those stretches in throughout the day, just at those opportune moments. So I've mentioned the kettle boiling, but even when the children are napping or they're occupied by something, getting that time in just to do a few simple stretches that just take a couple of minutes can be really helpful. And if your only piece is when you are on the toilet, then even doing some neck and shoulder stretches when you're there can help multitask as well. I think the biggest thing that really came from the people that I spoke to who have axial SpA and are raising children is that it's really important to look after yourself. The more you care for yourself, the more you'll be able to look after your little ones as well. So that can be really helpful. And I've linked there to our webpage on Advice for Family Life, where we go into this in more depth, and also talk about different things that are available to make things easier physically when we're looking after a family. And then during a flare-up, we know that axial SpA can cause flare-ups of symptoms, and that gives you periods of time where you're not able to be active, because of pain, joint stiffness, and fatigue seem to be the most common symptoms of this. They're also unpredictable as well, so it can be really difficult to know how long they're going to last, how severe they're going to be, and what sort of symptoms they'll cause. So of course, it's naturally going to throw you out of your usual routine, particularly your usual exercise routine as well. So it's important not to feel pressured to stick with your usual routine during a flare-up. And sometimes you can actually find that you can create a flare routine, so something that you know that you can do during a flare-up and how active you can be without feeling that pressure to do all of your usual activities. And the first key information as well is just to listen to your body as well. No two flares are the same, so even if you can usually do some activity, just listening to your body and making sure you're doing it within the comfortable range. And keeping moving little and often tends to be the best way of doing it. For example, doing gentle stretches just for a couple of minutes and then having a rest, or doing some walking around the house or outdoors, using mobility aids if that would be helpful. So you're able to keep moving little and often, but then having those rest breaks in between that can really help your fatigue. And again, just adapting things as needed. So for example, using aids around the house. We've done a live session on this previously. That's available on the My Life webpage. And also asking people for help in terms of during a flare-up, it might be helpful for them to put anything sort of that's low down or high up if it's difficult to reach, putting that somewhere easy to reach. And then when you're out of your flare, you can put them back up onto a shelf or down into a cupboard, so you get those day-to-day stretches from your usual activities. It just means that during a flare-up, you're taking it a little bit easier and looking after yourself. Now, I think we've got a few more people joining us, so if you have any questions, please do pop them in the comments. So I'll have a Q&A in a few minutes. Now, I'm going to talk about actually creating a routine to help you cover all of these different areas that I've gone through already. So some people find that actually keeping a note of your symptoms over a period of time helps you try and identify if there's a time of day that suits you best for being more active. So for example, some people find that first thing in the morning, their pain and their joint stiffness is at its highest. So actually they'd rather just do some gentle stretches as they loosen up. And then they save any of the stronger exercises like the cardiovascular exercise or the strengthening exercises for later in the day when their pain levels are lower and their joints are a lot looser. Similarly, planning ahead, so looking at your commitments for the week ahead and really planning your activities around that. So again, as I said, you may be hitting a lot of these areas naturally with your activities, and you may have one day in particular in a week that is really busy. So it's good just to help them plan to have a little bit more of a restful day the next day, just doing the stretches and the balance exercise perhaps, and then you can build back up again. So not doing too much of one activity all in one go on one day. And keeping a note of it somewhere that you'll see it. So for example, in a diary, if you use one, or even on a wall planner or poster, or a pin board if you've got one, just reminding you to do those exercises or that routine, just to keep it at the forefront of your mind, because naturally we do just tend to go on with our day and not necessarily think about how we're using our body, if we're doing enough activity and so on. So having a physical note and reminder is really helpful. And some people like to have things like post-it notes around the house, or setting timers on their phone, or even enlisting a buddy so they can help remind you as well. And particularly if they're joining you in the exercises, that could be really good motivation too. And of course, linking it to certain activities I mentioned earlier, but also things like joining a group can be really helpful. So I've put the link there where you can find if you've got a local NASS group. So in the NASS branches, we have physiotherapists leading stretch sessions, either in person or online. If you don't have a branch near you that you can join for physical sessions, then the Bristol branch are open for online sessions to anyone in the UK with Axial SpA. So again, we've got information about them on the website. But actually having a group session, whether it's once or twice a week, that is in your diary, it really helps just make sure that you're definitely going to hit that exercise each day and each week. In terms of setting goals, they're really helpful in terms of motivating you and keeping you going and working towards something. but it's really easy to either set our goals way too high or not really know where to start. So firstly, when you're looking at creating a goal, make sure that it's something real to you. You know, for example, I wouldn't be very motivated if my goal was just to do 30 push-ups every day for a month. Whereas if my goal was to be able to lift my nephew from the floor without any shoulder pain, then I'd be much more motivated. It's a real tangible goal for me that I really care about. It may be that actually I get to pick him up and without any pain because I've been doing push-ups each day, but by linking it to the much more real, motivating aspect, I'm going to be much more likely to stick with it compared to if I just try and do 30 push-ups a day and get bored with it, or just forget about it. So really think about something that's real to you, something you want to do, and just make sure that then you've got that intrinsic motivation there. And importantly, keep it achievable as well. It's really great to have a really big goal, but if it's too big, it can seem quite daunting, or it can seem unachievable, and then we lose motivation with that. So even if you do have a really big goal that you're aiming towards, try to break it down into smaller, more achievable goals that you can gradually work through. And then make sure that you set yourself a time limit. If it's indefinite, it's really easy just to kind of lose focus with it and lose track. Actually, if you have a goal and set it by a certain time, again, it just keeps you moving towards that. And of course, celebrate it. Have a plan that, when you reach that time limit, if you reach your goal, then you're going to celebrate it. Tell your friends and family about it so they can help motivate you as well. And make sure that, you reward yourself for the hard work as well. But also then, if you haven't reached the goal, particularly, it's really common that we can be doing really well with something and then we get a flare up out of nowhere and it just sets us back weeks. So, if something like that happens and it means you don't reach that goal, then don't then feel bad about it. Just look at it, reassess, see if there's anything you can do differently, and just reset that goal with a different deadline, with a different aim, and find a nice activity you can do when you celebrate to get there. And of course, if you're in doubt, then do get advice. It can feel very overwhelming when you're thinking about being more active and setting these goals. So speaking to your rheumatology physiotherapist can be really helpful because they can give much more personalised advice. So the key points to remember from this evening are to think of activity, not exercise. It's a lot less daunting, and actually, hopefully you'll have seen as I've gone through that you're doing a lot of these activities already. You're already ticking a lot of these boxes. And there may just be things that you can do to tweak that are going to help you be a little bit more active and help you with your axial SpA and with your general health as well. And have a variety, try to cover a whole range of different activities through the day and through the week just to get that balance. And look at your activities and when you feel best and find a time that really works for you, just to make life easier for yourself. And definitely set goals, celebrate your achievements when you reach them as well. And always listen to your body, really be guided by that. It's really important to do. And finally, getting advice and support and looking if there's a local NASS branch. So it's a screenshot of our website where you can pop your postcode in and see if there's a local branch to you. As I said, if there isn't anywhere local, then there's the Bristol NASS branch who run online sessions. They run 4 sessions a week, including a social session, and they're open to anyone in the UK with axial SpA as well. So for any parents who don't have much time, then again, an online branch might be a little bit easier to get to than something physical. And finally, tomorrow is the start of Stretchtember. So if you're looking for something new to help you get more active and you'd like some motivation and a community around it as well, then do consider joining in with Stretchtember. So it's daily stretching with yoga for AS. So we ask that you pledge to stretch either 15, 30, 45 or 60 minutes per day throughout the month of September. And we also ask that you then ask your friends, family and colleagues to sponsor you to help raise money for NASS while you do this. So through the month of September, if you sign up for Stretchtember, you'll get free access to the Yoga for AS library of yoga exercises, and they have lots of different lengths of videos and also different exercises that can be done seated, can be done standing, as well as lying as well. So there's lots of range there. And when you sign up, you also get a NASS t-shirt, you get a welcome letter and a bandana for your 4-legged friend if you have a 4-legged friend. And we do ask there's a minimum fundraising target of £20 just to cover the postage and packaging. And I'll actually be live on our Facebook page tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. again. I'll be live again, unfortunately for you all. I'll be joined by Jamie this time though. So Jamie from Yoga for AS will be joining, and we'll be chatting about what Stretch Timber is, how you can get involved if you haven't already signed up. And he'll also be leading some gentle stretches as well. So you'll be able to tick off your first day there and then. So thank you for listening this evening. I hope that's been really helpful for everyone, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you've got now. I'll just stop sharing my slides there. So I hope you can just see me now. And yeah, any questions from anyone? I'll take a look. For anyone who joined partway through, we will pop the video onto our website and our YouTube page alongside the slides as well. So all of those links that I've mentioned, we'll have them available in the slides, so you can head on and download those. So any questions? Oh, I can see lots of people said hi. Hi, everyone. Hopefully I can see them popping up. Hi, Helen. Thanks for joining. Oh, we've got two Helens. Right, so I'll just give that a second to see any other questions popping up. I think the comments might have hidden slightly, so I'll head over onto my other screen as well. But yeah, so do let me know if you're joining Stretch Timber as well. Pop a comment in there if you are. Brilliant. And as always, so I'm available on the helpline as well. So if you watch this and you have a little bit more, you need to talk to someone about more specific advice, or you're not quite sure where to get started, then do feel free to get in contact with me, either phoning the helpline, or you can also email me, zoe@nass.co.uk. Excuse me. Of course, for really personalised advice, then you can always speak to your rheumatology physiotherapist as well. So I've got a question from James, says, can we find where our local NASS is? Yep, absolutely. I'll pop the link in the comments afterwards, but just on our website, if you head to our website, you can then click on, I think it's, managing your axial SpA, and then in your area, and you can pop your postcode in there. I'll pop a link in the comments after the session, so it's really easy to find. So Alice has asked, hi there, any tips for when you're feeling quite depressed, common symptom, and how to get motivated? Absolutely. So actually a physiotherapist, Zoë Clark, ran a whole live session on keeping motivated to exercise, because we know it is a really big thing, particularly when you live with chronic pain and chronic fatigue. Sometimes the last thing you want to be doing is thinking about exercise, let alone doing it. So I'll pop a link to her full video in the comments. But I think a really good way of doing it to begin with, particularly if you're new to Axial SpA, really is by joining one of the branch sessions. Because when you have that community of people around you really encouraging you, but all people who really kind of know what you're going through, it can be really, really helpful, particularly with the online sessions where, you're just a little box on the screen. So, you don't feel like, you're having to go to a group session and see people in person, which can be quite daunting to begin with. But just meeting other people who are going through the same thing, and they can give you advice that they've learned over the years as well, can be really helpful. And also, if you're not able to do that, then if you've got any friends or family members who would want to become more active as well, and sometimes teaming up with them. So for example, scheduling to go for a short walk with someone, or even linking in with something enjoyable, like, if you've got a cafe near you where you can walk to the cafe so you can then sit and have a rest and then come back again. That can be a really nice way of incorporating a bit more exercise and movement without it feeling too daunting, and particularly on low days. So I hope that's helpful, but I will pop a link to Emily's full video because she's got loads of advice on that. Any more questions? I'll keep an eye on the comments over the next couple of days as well. So if you're watching on catch up and add any comments, if there are any that I've missed, then I'll come back and make sure that I answer those. Yeah, it's definitely hiding a few comments there. I'm glad that's helpful, Alice. Brilliant. Right, well, I'll give you all a couple more minutes to ask any burning questions. But in the meantime, I'll let you know when our next Facebook Live session is. So after tomorrow's session at 12:30 with Jamie, where we'll just be chatting about Stretch Timber, and Jamie will be leading a few gentle stretches to get you all started. Then our next My AS My Life Facebook Live will be on Wednesday, the 21st of September at 6 p.m. And I'll be joined by Lara Wiseman, who is a pain management mindset mentor and life coach. Lara will be going through some really nice breathing exercises. She'll be giving us a masterclass on breathing exercises. I think they last about 10-15 minutes. And they are really nice exercises to incorporate into your day, not only to help sort of get some nice stretches through your rib cage and loosening stiffness in your rib cage and back, but they're really lovely relaxation techniques as well. So I know she's been running sessions where people do them just before bed, and just to help them kind of wind down and relax. That can really help with pain levels and getting a good night's sleep as well. So again, that was the 21st of September at 6 p.m. So do feel free to join that, or you can catch up. Again, it will just stay on our Facebook page and go onto YouTube as well. Yeah, so a question from Alice. Oh, no need to apologise, as many questions as you like. So Alice says, when I'm stretching, sometimes I twinge things and it's quite unpredictable. Am I probably stretching too quickly? Yeah, so with that, absolutely, it can be. If you're stretching too quickly, you can then find that you twinge the muscles. Sometimes it can be a matter of kind of warming things up a little bit first. So doing, a little bit of whether, if you're able to walk, then brisk walking can be helpful. Or even as you're sitting down, just bringing your knees up, so you're, as if you're walking, just raising your knees to get your heart rate up a little bit and warm the muscles up first. That can be helpful. Or even with a physical heat pad, or having a hot shower, hot bath beforehand. But if you find with those, with that advice, it still twinges, then do speak to your rheumatology physio and just make sure that there's nothing there that needs to be addressed that's causing it. But usually it is from that. Or also, if the muscles are quite tight, it's quite common. So a lot of people find in the neck and shoulders as well that it can feel quite sore to stretch there. So just making sure that you start really gently and really thinking about quality, not quantity as well. So just doing a small stretch, holding it for a short amount of time, then gradually building that up over the course of a few days and weeks is really nice, rather than feeling like you've got to do really strong stretch all in one go. Just build that up nice and quick, nice and slowly. Yeah, as always, you can always get some personalised advice or drop me an email, zoe@nass.co.uk. Great, so no other questions coming in, but as I said, I'll keep an eye over the next couple of days. So if we have any questions after the live, I'll get back to you, and we'll pop the slides and the video on our webpage, My AS My Life. So I'll pop the link to that in the comments as well. So after I've uploaded those tomorrow, you'll then be able to download the slides. So you've got a copy to go through, and also you'll be able to click on all of those links to that extra information and resources as well. So thank you everyone for joining me this evening. I hope it's been helpful. It's been nice seeing you all through the screen after a couple of weeks off. And yeah, I'll see you all again tomorrow then, hopefully. Take care everyone, and have a lovely evening.